I'm gonna start off with a bummer here because that's clearly an exception for me. College, for most people, definitely for me, will probably be an extreme disappointment. Unless you're really career driven or if you're like really social and good at making friends and going out and hanging out with people. Unless you're either of those things, you're probably not going to enjoy it being in college. It's going to be a very isolating experience. At times, it's going to feel like some sort of a purgatory. Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like for me. But once in a while, you get to have that one class that you really enjoy, something that actually pertains to your hobby, the hobbies that you had since you were a kid. And for me, luckily enough, I get to have a class where I compare a film adaptation with its original literary source material. Now, initially I thought maybe this, it might just be something that sounds good. What if I'm like going into this class and comparing like fucking Nicholas Sparks novels with this movies or the Harry Potter books with this movies? Like, I want to do something beyond that, something a bit more nuanced and more substantial than that. And luckily enough, I looked into the schedule, and turns out we were going to do Mikhail Haneke's The Piano Teacher and compare it with Jelinek's original novel. And not knowing much about the novel, but loving the movie, I thought this could be something that could really open new territories for the film for me, because I really want to appreciate the film, and I think I do, just not fully. Like, I love the movie, but there are certain things that I can't explain, there are certain scenes that I don't really understand, so I thought this class would really help me out. And considering the professor is actually like a theater major who's working in theater, I thought, okay, this guy knows his shit, let's see what happens. And I definitely learned a lot about the movies, things that I never thought things that I would have probably never got to a conclusion of on my own. And I like to just say, some new stuff about the film that I've learned, because I've never made a review on this movie. I think I put it in the my top 40 favorite movies of all time list back in 2017. That list has substantially changed now, just so you know. But I want to start off with what my original thoughts about the movie, my original interpretations of the film. I would say this is Haneke's best movie. Granted, I've only seen 4, maybe 5 of his films, but I think Haneke's a director who portrays basic human desires through exploring the obscene and the uncomfortable. When you watch Funny Games, it's clearly like showing you this really obscene and violent and vulgar expression of, human desire for this sense of carnage and entertainment. You can talk about Amour being a film that's really exploring this uncomfortable area of death and what it feels like to lose love, something that you've devoted your whole life into. Maybe it's pointless. Is it pointless in the end when it's gonna disappear anyways? He's really good at doing that, and by using long shots, he kind of portrays humanity as it is. He's one of those directors who really goes for realism, but at the same time, distorting cinematic elements just enough to portray some set of an aesthetic, some sort of an auteur feeling to his movies. But I feel like The Piano Teacher is the most complex one that he's ever made. It's a film that's about a woman who craves real love. And I would say that's obviously Erica, played by Isabelle Huppert. And Clemmer, the character that she falls in love with, that's not the most correct term to use, but Clemmer represents lust. He represents, youthful lust, but, lust for Erica is something that she indulges in to escape real life. That real life could be the parental oppression of her mother, the existential oppression of her job. So she craves love, while mixing it up with extremes of lust. In her head, it's very warped out because of her personal situation. And in the film, and this video is just going to be filled with spoilers. I'm just going to assume that you've all seen The Piano Teacher. In the film, Clemmer provides the extreme of lust, and in the process of providing that, Erica loses the chance at love. So the extreme was not something that... The extreme of lust was not something that she realizes that she never really wanted the extreme of lust. She just thought she did. And in the process of that realization, she loses the chance at what she really needed, which is love. Which is why the film is probably one of the saddest movies I've ever seen, because in the end, she achieves nothing. She learns that she's a completely fucked up person, and in the end, she loses the chance at the things that might help her to get out of that situation. That was my personal interpretation, but that doesn't explain much about the mother and daughter dynamic. What's wrong with me today? Dynamic of the film, and it also doesn't explain a lot of things about the male figure. It doesn't really explain much about Clemmer, I would say. So here's some new stuff that I learned about the film that actually explains a lot of those aspects of the film. I'm just telling you what the professor said. I'm not necessarily agreeing with every single one of the things that he said. I'm just saying that this is a very interesting interpretation to add to the film. Maybe some of these information might actually add some substance to my personal interpretation that I had before. So this is the summary of what he said. Erica is miserable and feels insecure because she doesn't really feel that much of a sexual prospect. And when I say that, I'm saying that she doesn't really feel that much of herself as a woman. And these are some things that he said. Erica is actually a really old-fashioned name. Like, for some of us, we hear the name Erica and like, oh, it sounds so pretty. And I definitely think that's... Erica, I feel like in the Eastern world, in the Asian world, Erica is a very exotic name. But in France, it's a really old-fashioned name. It's kind of a hickey name. And, you know, that adds the old-fashionedness of her, of the way she dresses, and that would also add to the insecurity aspect of the character. And then you realize that she's a professor, and you know what they say: those who can't do, teach. And you realize she's teaching because she wasn't good enough to become a concert pianist. And then you realize that she's kind of a failure in life. And I never really thought that much about that aspect of the movie. And then, because on top of her being insecure about herself as a woman, she kind of needs to take the father role in the family, because the father, I believe, is in a is in a crazy house and is in an insane asylum. So, her mother kind of lacks this male dominant figure, or just a male figure in her life. So she kind of needs Erica to be that figure, because Erica is clearly the bread maker of the family, and she wants her daughter to have that kind of role in the family. But Erica herself wants to be a full-fledged woman. Clearly, she has urges, she has needs, while on top of that insecurity kind of provokes her to want those needs more. But her mother's presence prevents her from becoming this full-fledged woman that she wants to be. So she goes outside to watch porn, and porn reminds her of the sexual escape that she wants to have. But at the same time, porn also reminds herself that she cannot become a full man that her mother wants her to be. So it's kind of that conflict between her wanting to be a woman and her mother kind of wanting her to have a male presence in the family. And her escapades is just her indulging in her fantasy while also acknowledging her reality. And I feel like the self-harm aspect of the movie kind of shows her hatred of herself, because she can't either be a full woman or a full man. She can't fulfill any of these roles. And I feel like the scene where she kind of like throws herself on her mother, like as if it's like some sort of a rape, I think that explains that scene, because it's sort of that moment where she expresses her frustration towards her mother in a loosely sexual manner. You know, she's saying, "I'm trying to be the man now. Are you happy?" And then she starts crying because once again she acknowledges just how miserable she is in this, you know, power dynamic. The masochism aspect, I feel like, is her desire to get someone to take this burden of needing to be a male presence in the family away from her. So she's kind of asking Clemmer to be that male presence that she cannot properly fulfill. And then, you know, all that kind of feeds into the toxic cycle that I already talked about, how what Erica really needs is proper love, not, you know, burdensome love that her mother is kind of giving her. And unfortunately, in the process of trying to deal with her own situation, she's warped love and lust together in a very extreme way, and she's sort of become this broken person. Basically what my professor was saying is that the film is trying to say that parental oppression leads to an arrested sense of one's sexual awakening. At the same time, it prevents the person from being truly independent from their past and their family. Apparently in the book, because in the end of the movie she stabs herself and then she walks away. In the book, she stabs herself, she walks away, but in the movie we never see where she goes. In the book, after she stabs herself, she goes back to her mother, back in her apartment, which, you know, kind of like is this symbolism of coming full cycle. She can't fully escape her mother and whatnot. And I thought, wow, that explains a lot. I'm not sure why I mean, I guess it would have been just a bit too dramatic if it was done on film. I feel like that would definitely work within a book, but definitely not visually. It might almost feel too campy, maybe even in a Cronenberg-esque way. But yeah, that's what I got from... That's everything, quite frankly. I'm not sure if I want to do more of these, because the rest of the schedule for this class are Korean movies, and I know for a fact that most of my audience don't know anything about, like, classic Korean. I'm not talking about Oldboy here, I'm talking about Our Twisted Hero, or the original Handmaid, or An Aimless Bullet, stuff like that. And I'm too lazy to introduce you to all that classic stuff, so yeah. That's what I learned from the one class that I enjoy in college. Bye. Hey, it's been a few days since I recorded the first part of this video, and I just wanted to add something at the end of it because I've been thinking about my professor's analysis and my own analysis, and I've realized something that kind of makes my professor's analysis a bit flawed, and I know that's, you know, I've got a lot of nerve to say that, but this is what I think. I feel like my professor's analysis focuses way too much on the fact that Erica is a product of her environment, and not enough, there's not enough focus on her as a character on her own. While my analysis can be, you know, you can say that my analysis is, there's not enough focus on her environment and just too much focus on her as a character. But I do feel like there should be some balance there, because personality and character is a product of one's environment, but simply, you know, analyzing the environment doesn't necessarily mean you can fully understand the character that comes from that environment. You know, and I say that that's very important because the theme that I'm kind of coming towards in this video is parental oppression. And the thing with parental oppression is that it's definitely an environmental thing when it affects a person, but there is a certain point in one's life, if they are being affected by parental oppression, where you are able to choose to not succumb to it, or at least, you know, kind of, you know, get the courage to fight back. And you can say that Erica is a character who didn't fight back, and that's her own fault. And that's kind of what that's a lot, that says a lot about her character, and I feel like my professor didn't
explain that much about that aspect, because every single thing that she gets, every single thing that she suffers from here is a sort of a result of her not being able to fight back her miseries. And I know that sounds, that honestly, saying that out loud makes me sound like a really, it makes me sound like I lack empathy, but it's true. There isn't really a soft way to say it. You know, in the end, there is your own fight, and you can say that she lost her own fight, and that's why she's kind of suffering in this movie, and that says a lot about her character. And you can say that because Jelinek, the writer of the novel, she was supposed to be this pianist, and she fought back, and she got depressed, and she started writing. You can say that she defied the oppression of her mother and whatnot. You can say that Erica, that is, you know, kind of Jelinek writing her own worst case scenario, you know, and I feel like that's a very interesting idea, and I feel like my professor just didn't really say that much about that aspect. So what I'm saying is that, in conclusion, this whole movie is a result of Erica's own twisted but misconsidered objective. And what I'm saying is she has her own objective, it's just that it's a very twisted one, and it's a very mentally unhealthy one. What my professor is saying, mostly saying, is that she's a subject to her circumstance, but I don't think that's enough analysis. There's not enough emphasis on her character as a isolated entity. And I'm saying this with a bit of, you know, reluctance, because, you know, you can't really say much about a character when you kind of isolate them from their environment. So I'm saying that there should be a balance between my analysis and his analysis. That's just what I'm saying. So I'm just saying that my professor isn't 100% there, and some of you might be saying, hey Ryan, you got a lot of nerve to say that. He's a professor and you're not. Well, guess what? Who's got 1,000 subs? That's right, not him. So you can all eat my ass. That's right, that's what I said. That's my thing. I'm gonna regret recording this part. Bye.